Hi everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of Behind the Black and Orange, the show that takes you backstage here in the Uxbridge Public Schools. I'm Frank Tiano, the Superintendent of Schools, and judging by the investment in our new set here in the luxurious UCTV studios at Uxbridge High, we are committed to continuing our efforts in showcasing the amazing things happening with our students and our staffs. A big shout out to Mr. Giles for our set. We have a great show for you today as we are talking about professional development, or otherwise known as the thing that teachers do while students get a half day, as well as curriculum development. Ms. Wendy Phillips, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Accountability, is with us in the first segment to provide us with the purpose of professional development, or as it's known, PD, and overview of how that works for our educators here in Uxbridge. Later in the show, we will have Sharon Manns, a literacy coach from the Taft Early Learning Center, and Hurley Silber, a social studies department head at Uxbridge High, to provide us with some insight into how we develop and implement new curriculum in the district. All right, we're going to roll the intro, and we'll be right back with Wendy Phillips. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about professional development right now, and with us today we have Wendy Phillips. She's our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Accountability for the Uxbridge Public Schools. Now, as you may know, I started here in July, and one of my first tasks was to hire a new Director of Curriculum Instruction and Accountability. After a long search, we came across Wendy Phillips. Ms. Phillips comes to us from Wakefield Public Schools, where she has a strong background in mathematics curriculum development, as well as a math teacher all the way from the middle school level to the college level. Prior to that, she was a software engineer. So far, so good. Wendy, you've been doing a great job. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
It's great to be here. It's great to have an opportunity to talk about what teachers do and to kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at being a teacher.
It's funny. We look at the school calendar and we see those PD days, those half days, those full days. Kids know they have the day off or they have a half day off, right. And all the teachers go to work. So the burning question in everyone's mind is, what is professional development and why do teachers need it?
Yeah. So because I was a software engineer, I always wanted the same thing with my kids. It was always a sort of a headache for me because I had to come up with other childcare. So basically, professional development is school for teachers. There's a lot that goes into teaching. Things are changing all the time. We have new standards. We have new initiatives. Technology's changing. There's new research around brain development and what students need. And all of that takes time and opportunities for teachers to learn, as well as be able to
One of this year's
together.
goals for professional development is to
top of
provide
that,
teachers with
the
opportunities
state
to collaborate between buildings.
In order to renew license,
By working together in content teams, teachers can align their curriculum and create a smooth, consistent experience for students.
In different areas.
The full Professional Development Day on January 18th allowed a perfect opportunity for teachers from different buildings to meet in content
that's
teams.
Important for administrators as well.
We had separate agendas for every
educators,
department,
right.
including all content
So
areas,
in your
unified
position,
arts,
you're in charge of
paraprofessionals,
all
counselors,
curriculum,
and
from
nurses.
English to
We had
world
over
language
14
to
separate
science and
agendas,
so
and
forth.
each session
Pre-K
was
to 12
facilitated by a
and
curriculum and
beyond. Can you tell us what your
instruction leader
overarching goals
or an
are for
administrator.
us this year and going
Some
forward?
of the workshops
So
teachers
coming
participated
on board,
in included readers
I really
workshop,
wanted to get to know
using case studies
what
to teach
Uxbridge was
history,
all about.
strategies
I
to
met with
support
a
students
lot
taking
of
the
the
new
teacher leaders. We have
computer-based
curriculum and
MCAS,
instruction
and
leaders
unpacking the
who,
new history and social
sort of
studies
lead the
frameworks.
departments, and I met with all of them.
One of the workshops I think will have the
number
most
one thing
impact
I heard
on our
was
students
we
was
want
called
opportunities
A
to
Vision of a
connect with our
Graduate.
peers.
During the
So
workshop, teachers worked in content
you
teams
kind
to
of- you
identify
gave
the
the
knowledge,
analogy at the
skills,
beginning
and
of the year
attitudes
as
a
school
graduate
being
of their
islands,
program
and,
should have.
teachers want
Once
the
these vision
opportunity to
statements are
visit the other
refined and
islands.
completed,
So,
they will
that's
become
one
the
of my major
guideposts for
goals this
future
year.
curriculum
I also
decisions.
want to meet
So teachers in all
needs.
schools are working toward
like I
the
said,
same
there are a
goals.
lot of different areas
Feedback from
that are
teachers
required
about the
for
day was very
licensing.
positive,
Teachers
and in
need,
the end, it will
professional
be our
development
students who will
points
benefit
in
most from the
special
teachers' work.
education and teaching English language learners. We have all new technologies, getting to know those and how to effectively use those with students. So I want to give teachers options so that they have a choice and they meet their own needs just like they meet students' needs. And then really providing those opportunities for vertical connections and being able to align our curriculum so that students don't even notice a difference when they move from school to school. The curriculum is lined up and there's no repetition, and it makes a smoother experience for them.
So there's a lot going on in what you just said in terms of standards and how we help students meet those standards. But also, too, specifically, as we differentiate for our students, we need to differentiate for our staff.
Correct.
And so a lot of time, as you mentioned, is spent identifying those needs for our students and our staff.
Correct, right. And then on top of it, we also have teachers have individual goals, schools have goals, and the district has goals. So we all want to be working in concert so that we're moving our school and our district forward at the same time as the teachers are learning and growing.
That's an important factor as well. So now we have a PD day. Again, the kids get to leave half day. What does that look like for the teachers?
So typical PD day, like as you mentioned, there are a lot of different departments. We also have paraprofessionals, we have nurses, we have counselors. So really thinking about all of those different teachers and what their needs are. We have many, many workshops going on an early release day or on a full professional day. So sometimes we have outside presenters. So for instance, this year we're at the K through 5 literacy plan is working on readers workshops. So we have some professionals from Leslie College coming and working with K through 5 teachers on implementing that. Sometimes if we're working towards a district or school goal, we'll use our curriculum and instruction leaders or other teacher leaders to run a workshop. There's a lot going on. Typically there's teachers in every building working together, collaborating together.
So they're able to use their own expertise and be able to share that with their peers.
Correct.
For the best
Yeah,
practice.
so we're kind of sharing, if you have a teacher that's strong in one area, they can run a workshop and then we share it with other teachers. So.
And as you mentioned as well, I know you've been working closely with the principals to make sure there's that vertical connection as well.
Right.
Oh, that's great. So as we talk about professional development, it's the responsibility of the district to be able to provide that for staff, but it's also the responsibility of the staff member to find his or her own professional development. Sometimes people think that it only happens on that odd half day in March, but you had mentioned teachers working together, so it's not just in the half day, is it?
Right. Just like with students, we want learning to occur everywhere. Same thing with teachers. So teachers oftentimes will individually go out to workshops. We have a lot of work that goes on during the summer with teachers working in groups, aligning curriculum, developing curriculum around new standards or tweaking what they've been working on. We have job-embedded professional development, which means that it can happen during the day. So sure. We have literacy coaches at the elementary level that work with teachers that actually go into classrooms and then they can reflect afterwards. And we have common planning time so that teachers at grade levels can get together and talk about their curriculum, look at student work, reflect on what went into that work and how they can improve their practice so that they can improve outcomes for students. So it's really an ongoing thing. What the early release days and the full days allow us to do is to bring groups together from outside schools. And another opportunity that we take advantage of is consortium. So we're working with schools in the area and sharing practices, and it builds our sort of expert pool as well.
That's great. And so there's a model of continuous learning for our educators, which is exactly what we want to model for our kids.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So we just had a full professional development day. How is that different from the early release? I know it's twice as long.
Right, yeah.
So what happened on our last day a few weeks ago?
So what the full days give us that the half days don't is the same start and stop time. So the Taft has different hours than Whiten and the high school, and that makes the early release days a little more difficult. So on this last day, I really took advantage of it, and we had groups working in pre-K through 12 and developing a vision of a graduate. So excited about that work. We're carrying that over. Our curriculum instruction leaders also meet monthly together, so that provides some of that vertical connection, and we're going to be able to use that group to make some of those connections. We had paraprofessionals doing a workshop during the last full day, and we had readers workshop going on for both pre-K through 3 and pre-K through 3 and for 4 through 7. So a lot going on. I think we ended up with over 14 different agendas for teachers, customized to their department.
Right. And I know from that day, and just in talking with teachers and some of the feedback that you received, that it was a very successful day. Teachers felt that they were having their needs met. Sometimes when you have a wide variety of different workshops, sometimes it's about the actual product of the workshop versus what teachers need so that they can embed in their instruction. So I thank you for that day.
Thank you. Yeah.
Truly, the feedback was tremendous. And thank you for sharing with us in terms of what happens on professional development days. Oftentimes people see what teachers do between 8 and 3, but behind the scenes teachers are working very, very hard to prepare lessons, to assess their students.
Correct.
And working to meet their needs.
Right. I remember my husband saying to me, he's like, "You've been doing this for years, aren't you done?"
Aren't you good at it yet?
Right. And I think that's the thing for people to know, is that we're never done. It's always, we always want to make it better, and things are always changing. So,
well, thank you, and thanks again for joining us on the show and in the district.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad to have you.
I love being here.
When we come back, we're going to have two of our curriculum leaders who will be talking to us from their perspective about curriculum development and that process that happens here in Uxbridge. In the meantime, please enjoy this behind-the-scenes look of our most recent Professional Development Day.
One of this year's goals for professional development is to provide teachers with opportunities to collaborate between buildings. By working together in content teams, teachers can align their curriculum and create a smooth, consistent experience for students. The full Professional Development Day on January 18th allowed a perfect opportunity for teachers from different buildings to meet in content teams. We had separate agendas for every department, including all content areas, unified arts, paraprofessionals, counselors, and nurses. We had over 14 separate agendas, and each session was facilitated by a curriculum and instruction leader or an administrator. Some of the workshops teachers participated in included Reader's Workshop, using case studies to teach history, strategies to support students taking the new computer-based MCAS, and unpacking the new history and social studies frameworks. One of the workshops I think will have the most impact on our students was called A Vision of a Graduate. During the workshop, teachers worked in content teams to identify the knowledge, skills, and attitudes a graduate of their program should have. Once these vision statements are refined and completed, they will become the guideposts for future curriculum decisions, so teachers in all schools are working toward the same goals. Feedback from teachers about the day was very positive, and in the end, it will be our students who will benefit most from the teachers' work.
And we're back. We have two of our educational leaders here with us from both ends of the spectrum of the district. With us, we have Sharon Mans. Sharon's coming to us from the Taft Early Learning Center, where she currently is a ELA coach as well as a reading specialist. But you've also taught pre-K, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
You've done it all.
I have.
And we have Hurley Silber from the high school. From the social studies department, he is in his first year as the department head. And welcome, both of you. Now, I know you're both at two different schools, but you have some things in common. You've both been here for 27 years, and you're both Uxbridge High graduates,
Right.
class 86 and 87.
Yes.
So glad that you're here.
Thank
Sharon,
you.
we're going to start with you.
Okay.
And we're talking about curriculum development. Now, as a literacy coach, we've heard a lot about our literacy plan. Can you tell us what that is and how did it come to be?
Yeah. So back in 2016, a team of educators, administrators, teachers, special education staff, all got together, and we were trying to research best practices in literacy. So we visited schools in other districts to find out what they were doing with their literacy program. And the goal was pretty much just to put together a plan that would help to move our students forward in the areas of reading and writing specifically.
That's right. So you identified some needs,
Correct.
had done your research, done your homework,
Yes.
and then saw it in action in other
Exactly.
districts.
Right, right.
And so from there you developed some goals for this plan.
We did. So after visiting these schools, we kind of identified some areas of need that we wanted to implement here. And one of them is we wanted to go with the Readers and Writers Workshop model, which is basically having the students practice authentic reading and writing. You know, as with anything, any sports you play, any musical instruments, the more you practice, the better that you'll get.
Sure.
So the Readers and Writers Workshop model is based on that premise, to teach the students what they need to do and give them the opportunity to practice that. And we also wanted consistency in our phonics program. We wanted to make sure that the students were having a sequential phonics program, and it didn't matter what class that you were in, you were getting that same level of instruction.
Just across the curriculum as well?
Across the entire curriculum, exactly.
Nice.
Along with that, we wanted to adopt a better, sorry, lost my train of thought. A better way to assess the students in their reading
Sure.
and writing. And so with that, we adopted a quality assessment that is really helping to inform our instruction now, and picking up on some of the gaps that, that students may have, so that we can teach to those and in essence make them better readers and writers.
And are those assessments standards-based?
They are. It's a performance assessment primarily. So they are given a book to read at a level, and then they read the text. We're trying to see what they do at point of error, how fluently they read it, and then in addition, how well they understood it. And we get information from those assessments.
Learning to read is such a complicated process.
It really is, and there's a lot of pieces to it. Some students come by it very easily,
Sure.
And others it takes a little more instruction. And so these assessments and working with the students in small groups during the Readers and Writers Workshop, it really does help us to address their needs and make them better readers and writers.
And that's what I love to hear, just in terms of having the students reading and writing and embedding that across the curriculum. Now that has changed the instruction for our folks. Can you tell us a little bit about how the literacy instruction has changed here in Uxbridge the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago we had a Basil series. So you know, the teachers would open up and do page 1 and follow it a certain order.
And they had the teacher directions here.
Right, it's very teacher directed.
Prescriptive.
Exactly. So we changed the model now, so it's more developmental, and it's more for what the students need. And it's in small groups primarily. So the teacher is really the facilitator to bring the students to what they need to know. But it's really driven by the students' needs and what level they're reading on.
So there must be a lot of coordination too among the adults in the building in terms of working with students in small groups.
Absolutely. And I, myself and the other reading specialists and coaches get into all the classrooms, and we are working with students in just about every classroom, at least at Taft. And we have weekly consults with the teachers as well to, you know, say what we're seeing as far as the strengths and weaknesses of the students and where we need to bring them to the next step.
And that's so important. And Wendy had mentioned that in the last section in terms of job-embedded professional development. In other professions, whether you're a CPA or a lawyer and so forth, you have somebody to work with. And teaching, you know, traditionally has been isolated. So it sounds like a good model. How is this working for our students? What changes have we seen in their outcomes?
As far as their love of reading, I mean, one of our ultimate goals is love of literacy. We want a lifelong learner. And so you walk into any classroom and the students are enjoying that time. They're enjoying reading, they're enjoying writing, and they're involved in authentic tasks. You're not seeing the busy worksheets that they're doing. They're actually reading and putting into practice what they're learning with the teacher when they're working independently. and you're really seeing that love of literacy come across. And as with anything, if it's something that you're good at, you're going to want to do it more often.
Sure.
And that's what we're seeing with the students. In addition to that, we're just now starting to do our second round of assessments, and have seen tremendous growth in students that I work with in particular. 3 of the students that I worked with that were really struggling at the beginning of the year are now actually rating on grade level. So I'm really seeing that translate into their, with the assessments, into what they can do in any situation.
And that must be quite satisfying for you as an educator.
It is. That's what I love most.
Yeah. No, you can tell.
Yeah.
And literacy is the foundation for a lot of different subjects, including social studies. So now at the Taft, we've had this literacy plan in place for a few years, but now the state has changed our standards in social studies. So as department head, you've been working with your team in terms of making sense of these new standards. So can you tell us what some of the changes have been between the previous standards in social studies and what they are now?
Part of it is that the idea that we even have something that the state is looking at, because everything has been so STEM heavy, that the fact that social studies is now kind of in the picture and people are talking about it a little bit more. So the biggest change that we can see is the civics. The idea that they're going to be teaching civics in 8th grade now. For the first time, and that's a huge shift, especially in our climate, as far as political climate, because a lot of people have things to say. There's social media.
Sure.
So you start at an early age trying to get into what does it mean to be a good citizen, what are your rights, and how to get the word out there, that kind of thing. The other one is just the idea that I think it's more skills based than actually memorizing the history and knowing this and knowing that. It's more like analyzing after you've synthesized and after you've looked up and researched and putting an actual opinion together, which kind of goes along with the civics that you learned in 8th grade.
Right.
So it's a good change. It's nice to see.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot.
It's nice to have that focus on social studies where it's so embedded in everything that we do. Before it was just thought of isolated curriculum, but it's embedded in everyday life.
It really is.
So you and your department, what have you done so far in terms of implementing Plan for New Standards?
Well, the idea first was to, we had a professional development day that I attended. Someone from the state came in and kind of explained how the standards were going to be changing and what was going to be expected and how it's still a work in progress. I was able to take that back to my team, and it's actually been pretty exciting. We're kind of getting into brainstorming how we want to go forward. The civics was the biggest change. The fact that we brought the 8th grade up to the high school, and now that's going to be changing from world history to a civics class is really a huge change for the teachers and for the school itself. But going forward, now we're looking at changing the scope and sequence a little bit, how we're teaching it, how it's being assessed, the idea that we're looking at to, again, more research-based.
Right.
Instead of memorizing, who George Washington was, what president, what number President Lincoln was.
They can pull that on their phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to Wendy's PD day, last year we had a professional development day in Bellingham, where they brought in somebody from around the country. He's nationally known. And the thing that stuck with me more than anything, and I'm 50 years old now, so changing is hard.
Join the club.
It really stuck with me. He said there's 2 things that you usually tell a student not to do during a test. One of them is to talk to somebody else, and another one is to not use your phone. And then they go out to the workplace, and the 2 things they want people to be able to do is to look things up on a device and to work with others to get the answer.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. So I think we're looking a little more, not fully, but looking more at that kind of thing. We have a professional development day tomorrow, Friday, take it back, about DBQs that we're going to be embedding into the curriculum.
That's cool.
Which is much more, again, documents are used, you read them, you synthesize them, you put together an opinion, you can work together on it.
And sorry to interrupt, but if you just talk about like which documents, for example.
Oh, it could be anything. So if the question was about the New Deal, as an example, they might give you a political cartoon that involves FDR. That might be one of the segments, one of the programs, like the AAA program. They might have a graph showing stats of unemployment that you have to look and try to make some sense of, and then come back together and answer the question based on what you got out of those documents. So it's pretty exciting in that regard. It's higher level.
Yep.
But I've been noticing that our students are very capable of this, and I'm actually kind of surprised by it. We also have something called the Harvard Case Study.
Right.
That we're just getting into now, we're just learning about, but it's more like you spend a few weeks reading, like heavy-duty reading about certain things like slavery or Reconstruction, and then you come back to the class with those readings and you discuss all the different aspects in the history, future, and so on of those particular things. So it's a lot of links. It's not on an island like we were talking about before. Everything's linked together and how you link it together.
And are those readings, are those more narratives, or are those more document-based, or are those fiction?
Honestly, I haven't seen it yet. We just finished the professional development, and they're going to give us access to them probably tomorrow.
Nice.
So then we can start getting into the heavy hitting after that once we see them. But everything we saw from the video professional development was it's pretty intense reading. There's a lot to it. You may not get it, you may not understand it, but we're going to kind of plow through it together.
You're just going to be immersed in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to the next question in terms of what's the next steps, not only for your department here at the high school, but it does connect, we have social studies standards pre-K through 12.
Right. So we're going to probably have to get down to the lower levels. Once we figure out what we're doing here and we connect it to the 7th, and then we connect it to the 6th, and we kind of work our way back to what they can do at that point.
Sure.
And try to get them in. And I got to be honest, one of the things we're looking to hopefully do is to maybe get some of the teachers and the students here to get down to there and talk to students in 4th grade, 2nd grade, and they can actually teach the younger kids, which actually helps them to learn it themselves.
Right.
So we can make those connections too if we need to. Scope and sequence might change. We may be looking at getting away from, obviously 8th grade has to change. So instead of doing World History 9th and then US 1, US 2, we may actually be looking at possibly combining World and US at 1, World and US 2, World and US 3, more thematic kind of thing. Looking forward, it looks pretty exciting right now.
Yeah. The work is exciting, and sometimes when the standards change, it's it's a pain in the neck to change everything. But it just gives you the opportunity to look back at it with fresh eyes and rediscover what you kids can do.
Right.
Talking about being excited, what are you most excited about?
I think it's just the change itself. The whole thing, honestly. I never thought I'd be this energized at 50 and this close to the end of my career. I feel better about now than when I did at the beginning.
Wow.
And the changes make sense to me. The change, I can see it happening. I can see the kids getting a little more excited about what we're doing. You ask them questions, you ask them their opinion, an informed opinion, what's going forward, how does it link to the future and the present and stuff like that. It actually is making a lot of sense right now. So I think it's just the overall change and the fact that my department's on board, that we're ready to do this.
That's good. Well, we appreciate your leadership in that. And Sharon, we appreciate your leadership at the TAF level. Great to have educators who are passionate about what they do. And thank you so much for spending time, for being here on the show. I'm a little nervous that you say when you turn 50, we're at the end of our career. We could talk off screen. But we're going to close the show. And from all of us here at Uxbridge Public Schools, our outstanding crew of students under Mr. Barros' direction, and our great partners here at UCTV, I'm Frank Tiano saying thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Behind the Black and Orange.